In a small, quiet town nestled between rolling hills and lush green fields, there was a little shop on the corner of Main Street. It belonged to Mr. Thompson, an elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. His shop was a cozy place, filled with all sorts of items: candies, school supplies, groceries, and even small toys that made the children's eyes sparkle with delight. Among the many people who visited the shop regularly was a young boy named Daniel. He was about 10 years old, with messy brown hair and worn-out clothes. Daniel loved to come to Mr. Thompson's shop, not just to buy things, but to enjoy the warm atmosphere and listen to the shopkeeper's stories. However, Daniel's visits were not always happy ones. His family was poor, and he often had to count his coins carefully before making a purchase. Mr. Thompson noticed this and felt a deep sense of compassion for the boy. He saw the eagerness in Daniel's eyes whenever he looked at the new school books and supplies, but he rarely bought them. Instead, he would pick the cheapest pencils and notebooks, leaving behind the things he truly needed. One day, as Daniel put back a book he had been eyeing for weeks, Mr. Thompson made a quiet decision. "Daniel," he called out gently, "why don't you take this book with you today?" Daniel's eyes widened. "But, Mr. Thompson, I don't have enough money." The shopkeeper smiled and waved his hand dismissively. "Consider it a little gift from me. Education is important, and I know you'll do great things with it." Daniel hesitated, his pride making him reluctant to accept charity. But Mr. Thompson placed the book in his hands with such kindness that Daniel couldn't refuse. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," he whispered, holding the book close to his chest. From that day on, Mr. Thompson continued to help Daniel in small but meaningful ways. Whenever Daniel came to the shop, he would find an extra notebook or a pack of pencils slipped into his bag, and sometimes a small sandwich when he looked especially tired and hungry. Mr. Thompson never asked for anything in return, and Daniel never forgot his kindness. Years passed, and Daniel grew into a hard-working young man. Despite the difficulties he faced, he studied diligently and eventually won a scholarship to attend college in the city. He left the small town with dreams in his heart and a promise to himself that one day he would return and repay the kindness of the old shopkeeper. Life in the city was tough, but Daniel never gave up. He worked part-time jobs while studying late into the night. With each challenge, he remembered Mr. Thompson's words of encouragement and the small gifts that had helped him through school. Those memories gave him strength and determination to succeed. After several years, Daniel completed his studies and became a successful lawyer. He had achieved more than he ever dreamed of, but one thing remained on his mind: his old friend, Mr. Thompson. Without wasting any time, he decided to return to his hometown to visit the shopkeeper who had changed his life. When Daniel arrived in the small town, memories flooded back as he walked down the familiar streets. He finally reached the little shop on the corner of Main Street. It looked just the same, though the paint was a little faded and the sign creaked in the wind. He pushed open the door, and the familiar bell chimed. Mr. Thompson, now much older, looked up from behind the counter and squinted for a moment before his face lit up with recognition. "Daniel, is that you?" Daniel smiled and nodded. "Yes, Mr. Thompson, I've come back." The old man chuckled warmly. "Look at you, all grown up. What brings you back to this little town?" Daniel's eyes grew misty as he looked around the shop. "I came to thank you, Mr. Thompson, for everything you helped me when I had nothing, and because of you, I was able to study and become successful." Mr. Thompson shook his head modestly. "Oh, nonsense, my boy. You did all the hard work. I just gave you a little push." But Daniel wouldn't hear it. He reached into his briefcase and handed Mr. Thompson an envelope. "This is for you. Consider it my way of repaying your kindness. I want you to live comfortably now, without any worries." Mr. Thompson opened the envelope, his hands trembling slightly. Inside was a check with a sum large enough to take care of him for the rest of his life. His eyes filled with tears, and he looked at Daniel with a mixture of pride and gratitude. "I don't know what to say, Daniel," he whispered, his voice breaking. Daniel smiled and took Mr. Thompson's hands in his own. "Just say you'll accept it. You believed in me when no one else did, and now it's my turn to give back." Mr. Thompson nodded, wiping his eyes. "Thank you, Daniel. This means more to me than you'll ever know." From that day forward, Daniel visited the shop regularly, helping Mr. Thompson in any way he could. He even started a scholarship fund for children in the town who needed support with their education, ensuring that Mr. Thompson's legacy of kindness would live on. The little shop on Main Street became more than just a store. It became a symbol of hope, love, and generosity. People often told the story of the shopkeeper's secret gift and how one act of kindness had changed a boy's life forever. And as for Daniel and Mr. Thompson, their friendship only grew stronger with time. They would often sit outside the shop, sharing stories, laughter, and the satisfaction of knowing that a simple act of kindness could make the world a better place. And so, the story of the shopkeeper and the boy who once had nothing continued to inspire generations, reminding everyone that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples of change that would last a lifetime.